Do you want to prevent your teammates from dying in Hypixel Skyblock Dungeons, just like Dante is dead behind me? Well, if you don't want your teammates to be like Dante, then you may need to start being a healer in Hypixel Skyblock Dungeons to help save their lives. So let's get into the best class guide for healer that I have made ever. My last one is really old, so hopefully this new one should be a good update for anyone looking for a healer guide on my channel. So let's get right into it. As a healer, your job is to make sure your teammates stay alive. You have a lot of class abilities and class passives that are really important for everything your team will do. You need to be the one making sure that your team is performing the right actions rather than being the one dealing most of the damage. In fact, your damage will probably be pretty low, especially in the early game, but that's okay because you're going to be providing a very valuable resource to your team in terms of keeping them alive. So let's get into the gear you're going to want for the early game. At the early game, you don't have that many coins to invest, but you can still do some pretty serious help to your teammates. You have all of those abilities already, and they are basically your only strength. You do have access to your own weapon and armor, whichever cheap ones you've been using for now for entrance and floor 1. But, without that, you're probably doing the same amount of help as you would with that weapon, because you're not actually going to be dealing that much damage. Same with the pet, just use whichever thing you have lying around, and hopefully it'll help, but it probably won't. You just want to stay alive, that is your priority, so that you can keep your teammates alive too. Once we start getting to the early mid-game, then you can actually invest in some items. With armor, you're mainly going to want to get the Mender Helmet, that is one of the most important armor pieces. Then you can use like Dragon Armor or Heavy Armor or something like that you found on the floor in your entrance runs. That will be a dungeon armor that is helpful, but is not too expensive. As a weapon, you're going to want to get a Dreadlord Sword, specifically if you picked one up. Otherwise, you should just keep running dungeons with your sword until you find a Dreadlord Sword. This can be particularly awesome if you have a high mana armor set, like Wise Dragon or something like that, because you can still be doing damage, doesn't rely on you actually having a lot of damage reforges and stats. You're just doing damage based on your mana, which is pretty good in terms of dealing some damage as a heal. With the pet, you're still going to want to do whatever you want, but now we're moving in to a new item that you're going to want. And that is going to be the Radiant Power Orb. This will be placed down and will help your teammates by just healing you and them and everyone in its radius. Pretty helpful, not that expensive, and you can use it if you do a little bit of Slayer, so I highly recommend you get that. Next, we're going to be talking about the mid-game, where you're still going to want to use that Mentor Helmet, but now you're going to want to upgrade to probably Wise Dragon Armor, no more of that stuff you found on the ground. And you're going to want to use a new item a lot, and with your extras like the Radiant Power Orb, you're also now going to have the Zombie Sword, which will convert your mana into healing for you and those around you. You can also use as a weapon if you still have something on the floor or like an aspect of the dragons. That's okay. I would highly recommend you save up for a Flower of Truth. They're no longer that expensive like they used to be. They used to be like 10 mil, 15 mil. Now they're like 3. They're really cheap now. So yeah, try to get a Flower of Truth. They can be very helpful, and they're not that expensive. As a pet, you're going to want to either get an epic blue whale or an epic yeti pet if you could afford it. If you cannot, that's okay. You can continue to use whichever pet you have, but I would highly recommend them. For late mid-game, now we actually start to get into some investments that you're going to be making into your setup. You're going to want to get the Mender Fedora, which is an upgraded version of your Mender helmet to go along with your setup. This will be a decent price increase. They are relatively expensive, but not that expensive in comparison to some of this later game gear. You're also going to want the Flower of Truth, probably still, or you can upgrade to the Livid Dagger if you have the coins, because that will be dealing more damage. But you might not have access to the Livid Dagger yet, so it is 100% up to you. Now, I would recommend you getting a Blue Whale pet or something like that, just to boost your health so you can do a little bit of tanking duty as well, because if you die, then they lose access to their healing perk, so you really don't want to die. So, I would highly recommend you get a health pet like that or a defense pet, but, once again, not required at this stage. But once you get into early late game, it definitely is. For early late game players, you will want to try to get Necromancer Lord armor. This is an armor you can get on floor 6, and you will be dealing decent damage with it as well as having a bunch of health. You are going to want to get the Axe of the Shredded as your weapon, or the Juju Shortbow, or both preferably, and you will actually now be dealing some damage. You're going to, if you have decent stats, try the Jellyfish Pet, because that will boost your healing, but not much else. It does pretty much nothing for your health, so only use this if you have enough effective health, but otherwise it can be really, really helpful. For extras, you're now going to want the Florid Zombie Sword, the Fell Sword, and the Overflux. The Fell Sword you probably could have gotten earlier as well, but it will just boost your healing circle and other things, overall making it easier for you to progress through dungeons. So I highly recommend the Fell Sword as well, and now that you're moving on to real late game, you're going to want to get a little bit more into your investments into armor. Now we're moving on to Wither Armor with Gold Ore. You're going to want to be starting to switch out for Gold Ore pieces with your Necrolord, but now we're fully in Gold Ore with this late game setup. You're also going to want to invest into a Reaper Mask. This is really, really good, but pretty expensive and has quite high requirements, but at this point you should be able to handle those requirements and you're going to have to deal with them. For your weapon, you're now upgrading to a pretty significant price jump to a Wither Blade with the Estrella or Hyperion. Same pets of Jellyfish and Blue Whale, but you can also now switch out to damage pets if you're going to be a hybrid. You should be trying to be a hybrid, because that will be how you're going to be viable in later dungeon floors. You will actually still have to be able to deal damage, not just heal your teammates. And I recommend all of the same extra items as before. Now for endgame, you need to be hybrid. If you're doing these higher level master mode floors, you need to be a hybrid player, otherwise it just won't work. So be a hybrid player. This will be very expensive. You're going to need a Reaper Mask, Gold Ore Armor, and you will probably also need extra Wither Armor in either Storm or Necron if you're going to go like a hybrid class, which you do need to at this point, because you will need to be doing significant damage as well to support your team. Unless your team is just insane, they will probably need your help. So you will need to get some decent weapons at this point as well. So that Estrella and Hyperion are still up there, but you can also look into getting a Terminator if you do have the requirements for it and you have the billions of coins required for it. Then it is an incredibly powerful weapon that will shred through your enemies. And while you're using it, you can use one of your other Wither Armor sets. At this point, you're getting a very, very expensive billions and billions of coin setup. With your pet, things also change. You really now just need whichever one your team needs from you. This could be more damage, then use a damage pet. Great. If they need more tanking, use something like a Blue Whale or a Baby Yeti. If you need more healing, then a Jellyfish. Really, whatever they need, you need to be the one providing. And with the extras, you still need a Florid Zombie Sword to heal yourself. You'll probably want a Plasma Flux at this point, and a Fell Sword would also be very helpful. So, yeah. Things start to get very expensive as you get later and later into dungeons, but if you did enjoy this class guide, please leave a like and subscribe to my channel because it really helps me out, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Goodbye!